All right, chapter 8 is polar coordinates. So we're going to be plotting polar coordinates at the very beginning and then going on to other things with polar coordinates. But you're probably not familiar with polar coordinates. You're familiar with rectangular coordinates. That's your x and your y, your ordered pair, where you go to the right or to the left according to your x value, up or down on your y-axis according to your y value. Here, a polar coordinate, we're looking at r and theta, where r is the distance and theta is the direction. All right, so you already know how to find an angle. So if I give you the angle pi over 4, for example, you know that you are going to be going in the counterclockwise direction 45 degrees, or pi over 4. All right, the r value of 4 means that my distance is 4. So if I've got a polar grid, each one of these circles is going to represent 1 unit. So I'm going to go 4 units because my r value is 4, and I'm going to plot that point. So after I've gone 45 degrees in the counterclockwise position, then I'm going to go 4 units up, and that indicates that that point is 4 pi over 4. All right, let's look at another one. So we've got 3 negative 2 pi over 3. So negative angle, I'm going, or let's say that's negative 120 degrees. So a negative angle, I'm going in the clockwise position. So I'm going negative 90 plus 30 more, and then 3 units. So I'm going to plot that point right there. All right, now the next one can be a little bit more tricky because I've got a negative r value. What does a negative r value even mean? So if I'm looking at my theta here, which is 240 degrees, I'm going 240 degrees in the counterclockwise position, so 90, 180, and then 60 more. But, and I would be 2 units here, but since my r value is negative, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. All right, so my angle was 240, so I went counterclockwise, and then instead of plotting that at 2, I'm going in the opposite direction. So my point is going to be right there. So you need to make note of that. If your r value is negative, then you go the absolute value of r units in the direction opposite of theta. In other words, you're going straight across from theta if your r value is negative. All right, so let's look at a couple more of these so I can make sure you know what's going on. Here I've given you 4 coordinates. I've given you 3 pi over 2. I've given you negative 3, negative pi over 2, 3, 450 degrees, and then I've given you 0, 3. All right, so let's look at 3. Let's look at this first one, 3 pi over 2. Pi over 2 means 90 degrees in the counterclockwise position. 3 means 3 units up. So that I would plot that point right there. All right, let's look at this one next. Let's look at 3, 450 degrees. So 450 degrees is a positive angle, so I'm going in the counterclockwise position, 360 plus 90 more. So notice I end up right at that same point. So what did I do when my r value was the same? When my r value was the same, I just added a coterminal angle, which means I've got infinitely many coordinates that represent that same point, all by adding or subtracting 360. All right, let's look at another one. What about negative 3, negative pi over 2? Negative pi over 2 means I'm going in the clockwise position, 90 degrees, and then my negative r value means I'm going in the opposite direction. And if I went negative 90 degrees and then 3 in the opposite direction, I'm at that same point. All right. right? So that coordinate represents the same point as well. And then I just threw in a rectangular coordinate where my x value is 0, my y value is 3, so I don't go to the right or to the left, and I go up 3, and I'm at that same point again. So I wanted you to see these four coordinates that actually give you the same point. All right, let's do an exercise from the homework. So here's the example they gave us. They gave us -2, negative pi over 3, and they want us to plot the polar coordinate and then name two other polar coordinates that represent the same point, one with a positive r value and one with a negative r value. In other words, I've been given a negative r value, so they want me to find a coordinate with the same r value, and then they want me to find a coordinate with the opposite r value. So if I plot this point, and I've already plotted it actually, I've got -2, negative pi over 3, or negative 60 degrees. So what I did there is I went negative 60 degrees, let me get on the unit of 2, and then I went the opposite direction. So that's my original point they gave me. So I plotted that. Now they want me to find two more coordinates that represent that same point. So they want me to use -2 again, since that was my r value, to find another coordinate with that represents that same point. You're just going to find a coterminal angle. So you're going to take 60 degrees and either add or subtract 360 from that. And that's going to give you another coordinate with the same r value. So -2, 300 degrees would be another coordinate that represented that same point. And test it. Go 300 degrees, opposite direction, you end up at that same point. Now I have to find a coordinate with the opposite r value. So in other words, I need +2. Well, remember, when we're dealing with the opposite r value, we're straight across, or 180 degrees across. So really all I need to do is take my original angle and add or subtract 180 from that. And when I do, I get 2 and then 120 degrees. And if you look at that, if I went 90 plus 120 more degrees and I plotted that, that confirms that that is indeed a different coordinate that represents the same point. So I had a coordinate that was the same, that's negative, and I had a coordinate that's the opposite, that was positive in this case, and that's what they were asking for.